The streets of downtown Los Angeles once again became the backdrop for a crisis that has been escalating for months, this time boiling over into something unignorable. Blocks that once bustled with storefronts, offices, and tourists were overwhelmed as waves of undocumented migrants poured into the heart of the city, overwhelming services and stripping away the semblance of order that leaders had promised to maintain. What was intended to be a showcase of inclusion under a sanctuary city policy quickly unraveled into a scene of chaos. The sheer volume of people moving through the city, desperate for food, shelter, and safety, transformed downtown into something unrecognizable, and residents looked on in disbelief as entire stretches of the city seemed to collapse under the strain. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The mayor's sanctuary stance had long been hailed by supporters as a humanitarian necessity, a moral statement that Los Angeles would not bend to federal pressure. But the city's reality told a harsher story. Infrastructure designed for a population already struggling with homelessness and housing shortages buckled as thousands more arrived with nowhere to go. Skid Row, already emblematic of the city's failings, became only one of many places now brimming with makeshift shelters, tents, and improvised encampments that spilled into sidewalks and roads. Local residents who had endured years of rising rents, encampments, and public safety concerns suddenly found themselves in the middle of a crisis that expanded far beyond what any city department could handle. As dusk fell on downtown, businesses shuttered early, some owners posting handwritten signs pleading with city leaders for protection, or at least acknowledgement. Delivery trucks diverted, streets that once flowed with commuter traffic jammed up as lanes were overtaken by impromptu gatherings of migrants searching for food. Restaurants that once thrived on foot traffic from nearby offices became overwhelmed, with staff unable to serve the surge of people pressing in for meals they could not afford. In the background, frustration mounted among Angelenos who felt their voices had been ignored, while officials doubled down on policies that appeared detached from the city's daily struggles. The collapse was not immediate. It had been building in increments, each new arrival straining a safety net already threadbare. Shelters were at full capacity, outreach programs overstretched, and emergency services scrambling. For months, reports had hinted at the coming storm. Warnings from community leaders, downtown coalitions, and even members of city council who noted that the system was operating at breaking point. The mayor, steadfast in maintaining the sanctuary approach, dismissed criticism as political posturing. But the growing crowds spilling into downtown painted a picture that no rhetoric could cover. The atmosphere in downtown shifted from discomfort to outright panic as reports of confrontations surfaced. Residents, unable to navigate sidewalks crowded with makeshift beds and belongings, vented their frustration. Tensions flared between migrants and local homeless populations who were themselves displaced, and police presence stretched thin. Officers accustomed to routine patrols found themselves tasked with dispersing large groups, directing traffic, and trying to maintain calm, though their presence did little to ease residents' concerns. Instead, many felt abandoned, trapped between the influx of newcomers and the absence of decisive leadership. Beyond the visual upheaval, the economic implications began to seep in quickly. Downtown businesses, already battered by pandemic closures and lingering crime, now faced a new deterrent to customers. Tourism, which the city relied on heavily, faltered as images of crowded streets and chaotic scenes circulated through social media, discouraging visitors. Conventions and events considering Los Angeles as a host city grew wary, with organizers unwilling to risk exposing attendees to instability in the core of the city. The ripple effects stretched far beyond a single neighborhood. They threatened the financial backbone of Los Angeles itself. For ordinary Angelenos, the disillusionment was profound. Many had tolerated rising crime, encampments in public parks, and endless promises from officials that improvements were on the horizon. But the sanctuary collapse, embodied in the wipeout of downtown, was different. It represented not just a policy failure, but a betrayal of trust. The mayor's vision of Los Angeles as a beacon of inclusivity clashed brutally with the everyday experience of residents who could not safely walk through their own neighborhoods. Parents shielded children from sidewalks littered with discarded belongings and evidence of desperation. Commuters avoided certain blocks altogether, rerouting their daily lives around areas they once considered safe. Inside City Hall, the atmosphere was no less tense. Council meetings devolved into shouting matches between those defending the sanctuary stance and those demanding immediate reversal. Department heads scrambled to draft emergency response measures. Yet the sheer numbers on the streets made it clear that temporary fixes would not suffice. Federal officials looked on, some offering aid, others condemning the situation as proof that sanctuary policies were unsustainable. Meanwhile, advocates for migrants pushed back, arguing that the chaos was not the fault of those arriving, but the result of a system unwilling to expand its capacity to meet humanitarian obligations. The collapse of downtown Los Angeles into disarray marked a moment when the sanctuary debate shifted from theory to undeniable reality. Supporters of the policy had envisioned a city where vulnerable populations could thrive, shielded from fear of deportation. Critics had long warned of the strain on resources, the imbalance between idealism and pragmatism. Now, the evidence sprawled across the very heart of the city. The clash between those two visions unfolded not in op-eds or speeches, but in the lived experience of Angelenos watching their city slip further into dysfunction. At the human level, the scene was both heartbreaking and harrowing. Families arrived clutching their few belongings, huddled together on sidewalks, their children crying from hunger or exhaustion. Volunteers moved among them, handing out bottled water and sandwiches, but supplies vanished within minutes. Medical teams tried to treat dehydration, minor injuries, and infections that spread quickly among encampments without sanitation. Every block told a story of desperation, and yet also resilience, as migrants clung to hope despite the conditions. For them, Los Angeles had represented a safe harbor, a place where sanctuary was promised. What they encountered was a city teetering under its own weight, incapable of fulfilling that promise. The implications extended beyond Los Angeles. Across the nation, the collapse of downtown was broadcast as a warning, a symbol of what happens when sanctuary ideals meet the immovable constraints of resources and governance. Other cities, watching closely, reconsidered their own policies. Critics amplified their voices, pointing to Los Angeles as the cautionary tale they had predicted. Supporters scrambled to contextualize the crisis, arguing that the failure lay in execution rather than principle. But no amount of framing could undo the images of Los Angeles's core overrun, its sidewalks lined with people left in limbo. The story of downtown's wipeout revealed the fragility of systems stretched beyond their limits. It was not merely a migrant story, nor solely a political one, but a convergence of decades-long issues. Housing shortages, economic inequality, crime, and governance struggles. The influx of migrants did not create those problems, but it accelerated them, laying them bare in ways the city could no longer ignore. What was once a simmering crisis in specific neighborhoods exploded into the city's most visible spaces, forcing every Angeleno to confront the consequences firsthand. In the aftermath of the downtown collapse, questions surged without clear answers. How could the city restore stability when so much of its core infrastructure had been overwhelmed? What did sanctuary truly mean when the reality was this visible breakdown? And perhaps most pressing of all, what responsibility did city leaders bear for allowing the situation to spiral so far before acting? The answers would take time, but the imprint of that moment, the sheer sight of Los Angeles's heart overtaken, would not soon be erased. As the days stretched on, the atmosphere in downtown Los Angeles took on a sense of surreal permanence. What began as a sudden surge of people became a constant presence, altering the rhythms of city life in ways residents could no longer ignore. The familiar sounds of traffic and commerce were replaced by the hum of restless crowds, the cries of children, and the distant sirens of first responders cycling endlessly between calls. For those still attempting to keep their routines, each commute, each walk to a corner market became a negotiation with disruption. The visible collapse of downtown reshaped perceptions of safety and belonging, creating invisible borders within the city itself. Blocks once filled with energy now felt like contested ground, symbolic of a larger fracture between vision and reality, between promises made and the impossible task of sustaining them amid relentless human need. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Los Angeles sanctuary policies collapsing so suddenly? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.